Those types of experiences that I'll never forget, and they won't either. That relationship with the boys, yeah, and my wife as well, it's all the better for it.
Meet Mark Goodacre, father of 2 sons and a husband. Mark and his family are no strangers to being on the move. They've lived and worked overseas in multiple countries while raising those 2 kids, putting themselves out of their comfort zones to do something different, but always seeking to keep the family at the core of their consideration. He joins us today to share his story. Mark, good day to you.
Thanks, great to be here.
You've moved around a lot since you were a kid. How many different schools did you go to?
Yeah, it was 10 or 11 different schools all around Australia, most states.
And what are your memories of that change? Was it tumultuous, or was it just what your life looked like?
I think at the time it was just the way it was, particularly in the earlier years. You know, you accepted it what it was. As you got a bit older, you perhaps started to challenge it. And I do remember saying to my dad at one point, I think when I was in year 11 and he was off for another move, I was like, that's it, we're done.
Yeah.
I want to stay and finish schooling here.
And interestingly, there is a point in a kid's life where there has to be that continuity and stability. That was a point maybe you got to before your dad?
Yeah. He was looking for the new challenge and looking for that next step. And I think at that point, I was ready to sort of set some roots down after 11 different schools.
So tell me about the challenge that you and Rebecca took up with your 2 boys to go and live somewhere else, live a different life, and know that this was going to be a time of considerable change in a young family's life.
Yeah, so we were very careful about the decisions we made, and we discussed them a lot. And one thing my wife and I do when we make these types of decisions is we look at the pros and the cons. We look at, and we definitely weigh up the cons. We know that everything's not going to be rosy, that there are going to be challenges along the way. So we make that decision on an educated as we can be, and putting the family and the boys as a real core piece of that. That's key for us, and I think that's been part of. I don't want to use success, but I think that's what's made it work for us.
Okay, and this was a 3-year commitment to living in England. What did you say to the boys about what life would be like there to provide them with a framework that would just reassure them?
Yeah, I think for us, my wife and I had both lived in the UK previously. We ticked a lot of the boxes around Europe. So for us, it was, we saw the opportunity to take our sons, show them a whole new part of the world, giving them experience that, perhaps a lot of, Aussie boys don't get to at that age. So for us, it was about framing that. It was discussing that, we get over there, we can travel a lot. And for us, that was, my wife and I love to travel. So being able to pass that on to them and get that experience, with them for us was a massive opportunity. So, we talked about the places we could go, Paris or Rome, or the things we could do, be it, skiing or, travelling around the UK, and some of the history and the culture. We had to deal with the other realisation that, our kids love sport. So, we had to deal with the fact that I was still going to be able to play rugby, I was still going to be able to play cricket, and things like that. But, and skate parks. I remember literally going online, Googling skate parks in the local area, and showing photos of them to my son so he could understand that there was a skate park nearby that was a standard that would be acceptable to him.
It's really interesting, isn't it? The things that you are doing as a father to reassure your kids that things will be okay, when really they will be, but you want them to go very enthusiastically into this experience rather than being a little frightened or hesitant about it.
Yeah, and I think, wife and I, we have this 6-month rule. We know the first 6 months is going to be challenging and tough. There's a lot of change. We've both done it, prior to kids, and when we knew that we were going to have to get the kids through that 6 months and get them stabilised. And so there was a real focus right at the start about trying to settle the kids down, get them into a routine. I was starting a new job because I'd been sent over there with the company I worked for. So my wife, I've got great support in her. I couldn't do any of what I've done without her. And she sort of put her life on hold a little bit for those 6 months while we bedded the kids down, found our structure, found our place, and found our place in the community, so to speak.
What were the hard things in that first 6 months? Because I think a lot of people watching would know that this is a very familiar story, whether you're going overseas, whether you're moving interstate, whether at times when there was just change in a family's life.
Yeah, I think that some of the, there's always the challenge around, it's a complete restart. You're selling cars, you're applying for visas, work permits, and trying to open new bank accounts in another country. So you're trying to find a home, find a school. So there's all those challenges that come with it. I think the challenge we probably underestimated slightly was around the schooling. I think we found a good school, which we loved and we still love. It's got a real place in our family, that school. But it was probably, the way our sons, the change they had to go through, particularly the older one. He went from, because of the schooling year, he went and finished year 1 here in Australia, and then he entered the UK school halfway through year 3.
Yes.
Year two disappeared, half of year 3 disappeared. And so, that first period for him was a real challenge.
How do you deal with that sort of acceleration in your kid's life in that initial period?
Yeah, there's a bit of, for us there was a little bit of catch up, because I think, we had underestimated it. But you've just got to support them, We talked him through it, and it's like, you're making friends, you've still got your sport, and, for our boys, and I'm sure like a lot of boys, if they're playing sport, everything else can be a little bit easier for them.
Yeah.
So, we were lucky we lived in an environment where I could literally grab my boys, jump on the mountain bikes and ride out our door, and we'd be in the forest straight away. We were living in a semi-rural environment, so that helped. Not living in a city where we could just literally 5 minutes we'd be out doing something that would just put them back in there.
Did you find that work was taking you away from home a bit?
Yeah, with the job I took, there was a lot of travel. Quite often I could be away for a week, 2 weeks at a time. During the peak of the job I was working on, the project, it was not uncommon for me, but at least once a month I'd be away for some period.
Okay, this is always really important. How did you reconcile that with your kids, and how do you want your kids to look at this period when Dad is away? Yeah, so there was a few key things. I made sure I spoke to them every day. Sometimes time zones, if I was in Korea, for example, and they were in the UK, that could be a real challenge, but generally you made sure you spoke to them every day. Once again, my wife was awesome. She, and I particularly remember when the boys were much younger, when we lived in Singapore previously, we had a chart and there was a plane, and the plane got moved every day back towards 0, which was the day I'd come home. So there was that sort of physical reminder for them of. Was it important to normalise those conversations? Because I think sometimes when you're the person away working and you're feeling lonely too because you miss your family, that there's almost this inclination to do a kind of, and are you missing Dad? How much are you missing Dad? Which is, in my experience, is not a thing I'd ever like to put on my kids. Yeah. That you want to make it as normal as possible. I'll see you soon. I'll be home in a week. Yeah, exactly. You tell them a week out, a few days out that you're going. You tell them when you're going to be back, and and when I do talk to them on the phone, it's about what they've been doing. How's school been? And it's the usual conversation you get at the dinner table now. Yes. Oh, school was good. And silence. It's like, well, you still got to pull it out of them, regardless of being on the other side of the world or across the dinner table. And things are going quite well when you're having that conversation. You're the one really keen to talk to the kids, and they say, "See you later, Dad," because they want to go and do something else. Yeah, exactly. For them, it's it's normal, which I guess is a good thing, that they're not feeling uncomfortable about what's going on. Okay, you are in England in 2020, and already people watching this will think, I wonder what that COVID experience was like for Mark and his family. Tell us about the year. Yeah, it was a year we'd planned. We'd done a lot of travel in the 2 years prior. We had planned even a bit more travel in that third year. Unfortunately, that was all taken away from us. We managed a few small trips in lulls, but nothing like what we'd planned. But there was a lot of. I was working at home from March until we left in January.
The boys did homeschooling from, I think it was March or April through to the end of the school year, and then they were home again, with the school break until September. So, from March till September there was no homeschooling and school holidays. We had a period in the middle where, there was more isolations, lockdowns changed in various levels. So we
You haven't mentioned that you and Rebecca both had COVID.
Yeah, we did. That was, another, for us it was just replicating what we'd been through in the early stages, because, we were quite lucky in that neither of us really got sick. But it was just home isolation, homeschooling. So for us it was just going back to something that we'd been doing for an extended period earlier. But so we created things as a family. I stopped travelling, which was a real positive around it. I was working from home. I was there to see the kids do their homeschooling. I was able to support them on stuff that they were doing. But then we did things like family date night. And I think it started because my wife and I decided we needed a date night. So we put the kids in the front room, ordered pizza, whatever it was, and we had a date night because we couldn't go out and do anything. And then it was actually our younger son said, well, why can't we do that together? Why can't we have a family date night? And I was like, oh, okay. So, we'd all get dressed up and we'd cook a special meal, and, wife would set my son would set the table, and he'd light candles and all this type of stuff. And
it's really lovely.
Yeah, and then, which was really good. In summer we went outside and did it, and, we pitched the tent in the backyard. We, movie night, which meant we slept in the lounge that night. I might creep away at 2 o'clock in the morning because I haven't been able to sleep, but and things like that. We, when we were able to go out, whether it be just the 1 hour a day, or when it changed to you could go out once a day for an extended period or whatever it was, we went out. We made sure, my wife and I made sure that we were doing it with the kids. I wasn't just going out by myself to do my exercise, and
yes.
So we'd go for long walks around the area we lived in, or bike rides, and we found some amazing parts of the area we lived in that we had no idea existed for the 2 years prior, which was a real positive.
Mark, when I was your age, I was probably in a similar kind of experience with a family overseas, and that time was the greatest bonding time that we had as a family. And all these years later, we're still the beneficiaries of the great closeness of the experience. When you came back to Australia, did you have a sense that you had actually really achieved something as a family?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we probably didn't realise it straight away, but it's when wife and I have been able to sit back and look at the kids and see how they've changed and how they've grown and they've developed, and their ability to put themselves into situations that they normally wouldn't have done prior to us leaving. For them, and my son had a school assembly yesterday. Previously, getting up in front of a group, an audience, would have been quite nervous, but he was front and centre. Main role, well, one of the main roles. And absolutely loving it, enjoying every moment of it. And 3 years ago, that just wouldn't have been him. And we've seen his confidence grow. Both of them, their confidences have grown. They've developed. They're willing to take risks, I guess. But risks in the way of challenging themselves and experience new things and have that get involved in that type of stuff.
And what about you as a dad? What do you reckon you've got out of this experience?
Yeah, I think going back to what you said, it's that relationship with the boys, and my wife as well. It's all the better for it. The negatives as much as the positives have contributed to that. We had some tough times through COVID, the changes, the schooling, but then there's been the amazing times of taking our boys to Rome and walking around the Colosseum with them. I think we had an opportunity at one point where our son came home and said, we're learning about the Battle of Hastings. I want to go there. And I was like, where's that? And it was a 45-minute drive from where we lived. Yeah. So we went to Hastings. Yeah. And it was those types of experiences that I'll never forget. And they won't either. I've seen them have those conversations with other people.
Mark, on behalf of the Fathering Project and all the dads who've tuned in, thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.